Europe's biggest hope for breaking free from China's EV battery dominance just collapsed. So what went wrong with Northvolt, especially when you consider that they had such big ambitions and backing from companies like Volkswagen, BMW and Scania, worth billions? Last week, Northvolt, Europe's EV battery champion, filed for bankruptcy, Chapter 11 bankruptcy, leaving behind $5.8 billion worth of debt. This is a massive blow to the future of Europe's battery and EV industries, because there really are no other European companies producing large amounts of batteries. Not even, I mean, the one you might think of would be Polarium, possibly, but not even them. I also think the European Union's failure to support Northvolt highlights a really stark contrast in the level of commitment between Europe and China in fostering their respective clean energy industries. What Europe and the European Union do now will be absolutely pivotal for the future of Europe's success in the energy transition. Hi folks, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate that. My name is Ben Alexander and I make EV news videos, and I really hope this video is interesting to you. Please feel free to let me know at the end. Also, go at it in the comments. Put anything you like, as long as you like. Ask questions and that sort of thing, and enjoy the video. Sweden has an amazing history of creating large industrial companies like ABB, Saab, Scania, Volvo. There are others, but they're not necessarily industrial, the other ones I'm thinking. But they've been around, some of those have been around for the better part of a century as well. But when Peter Carlsson, he's the founder of Northvolt, unveiled his really ambitious plan in 2016 to establish a battery factory in Sweden, at the time he'd just been an employee of Tesla. That was it. He wasn't a multi-billionaire, he was just an employee of Tesla, really. It was met with a lot of skepticism, and it was designed with a target capacity of 16 gigawatt hours originally and expected to create approximately 2,500 jobs. And it came with an estimated price tag of 4 billion euros. And this was monstrously big and unheard of at that time in Europe. The location of Northvolt, that may or may not have helped. That's up for debate. The plant is in the top of Sweden, where temperatures can get down to -30, maybe even colder than that in winter, and it gets covered in snow. It's very cold, very icy. It is strategically a good place though, actually, but that did add some expense to, you know, moving materials up and down, either on the water or the main roads going up and down the country. So Peter Carlsson had worked directly with Elon Musk as CPO and head of supply chain at Tesla. And 5 or 6 years ago, he said, actually, in an interview, that gave him some extra opportunities and opened some doors for him. He wanted to bring Elon Musk's vision and the culture of the European workplace together with Northvolt. That was the premise, really. So they had secured the first $1 billion 3 years later, by the end of 2019, which made people think, maybe he's got a chance, actually, because that's $1 billion, that's a lot of money. And they didn't really see a future for Northvolt until then, really. They also secured contracts with companies such as Volkswagen, Scania and BMW. BMW, that was a $2 billion contract, which was just cancelled in June, I think, this year. The company was burning through a lot of cash, and for the first 9 months of last year, 2023, losses increased from 113 million euros in 2022 to nearly 950 million euros over the course of the first 9 months of 2023. If you think about that for a minute, that's 100 million euros a month in losses. And most of that was because they had high energy costs. They've got these massive buildings and multiple plants around Europe, and also a lot of staff, hundreds of staff, all wanting to have money every month. They've got to be paid, haven't they? So during this time, they delivered battery cells equivalent to 79.8 megawatt hours, which is less than 0.5% of the planned annual capacity of 16 gigawatt hours for 2024. So they were basically producing no batteries. So they were obviously going to default on their contracts with companies like BMW, for example, hence why they cancelled their contract. Earlier this year, they had reached the point where they had exhausted their cash funds and ended up with only $30 million equivalent in the bank. And BMW had just cancelled their order for $2 billion. They were failing to produce even small amounts of batteries. They had no choice. That is why they had to go to the US and file for bankruptcy, because they had no foreseeable large payments coming in the next 6 months, actually. The bankruptcy filing will now allow Northvolt to restructure and access new financing, and the company will now receive about $245 million in funds, including $100 million in debtor in processing financing, and also some cash collateral from a client of 145 million US dollars. So it isn't that they're turning off the lights, grabbing the little woolly hats and the jackets and the coats and scarves and going home. They can keep going, but this is a few $100 million. It's enough to keep going, but it's not the amount they need. This is a fraction of the amount that they will need. And I think that the failure of Northvolt sheds light on a larger issue. So this is something that is so clearly needed in the European Union. So why has the European Union not been supporting them more than this? That's an odd thing, isn't it? There are about 450 million people in the European Union and about 745 million in Europe. That does include the UK. So the European Union are seriously pushing for the end of ICE vehicles, and unless we can source batteries from within Europe, we will have to buy them from abroad, which is not ideal, is it? So China have got the market cornered, obviously. So Northvolt was our big hope of creating a European battery industry. China produces 85% of the world's battery cells, and 70% of the batteries that came in EVs globally last year were from China, basically. The European Union approved a $313 million guarantee for Northvolt. That pales in comparison to the multi-billion-dollar incentives offered and already given by the US and China. So BYD received in cash, in their actual bank account, 3.7 billion US dollars, that's 3.48 billion euros from the Chinese government in direct cash that already arrived. In 2023, the Chinese government gave the equivalent of 747 million euro to CATL just in that 1 year alone, really helping them get on with their business. The European Union has frequently emphasized reducing dependency on Chinese imports for EV batteries, but hasn't backed that rhetoric with sufficient action at all. Instead of viewing Northvolt as an expense or maybe even an inconvenience, it might have been more constructive, I think, for the European Union to view it as an investment in Europe's industrial future. Northvolt's bankruptcy is only highlighting policy failures. Countries like the US have enacted legislation such as the Inflation Reduction Act, which offers massive subsidies for domestic EV production. The European Union must adopt some similar measures to encourage and protect local manufacturing. They've got to do something. So without comparable support, European manufacturers are at a severe disadvantage, and they should probably be a little bit uncomfortable. Instead of lamenting the failure, I think the most constructive thing for the European Union is to do these two things at the very least. Number one, increase funding for green tech startups to help them compete globally, help them get off the ground. A lot of businesses fail in the starting years, and this is very important to the European Union's agenda. Number two, secure raw materials through partnerships and local mining efforts. They should really be doing that. One of the reasons why Northvolt is located up north in Sweden is because that's a very dense. There is a lot of minerals up there, more so than in basically anywhere else in Europe. That's why it's there. Maybe focusing on optimizing operations at a single factory before pursuing aggressive expansion might have been a more prudent strategy for Northvolt, but it appears they felt the need to expand as much as possible because the demand was there and they needed to get off the ground. Maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. Despite its ambition for European battery independence, Northvolt had to depend significantly on Chinese suppliers, which isn't good, is it? So notably, 2 of its top 5 suppliers were based in China, underscoring the difficulties in decoupling from established global supply chains. And basically 85% of the world's batteries come from China, so this is an issue. It does show how fragile the green transition can be without coordinated policy, adequate funding, and for sure a strategic approach to supply chains. If Europe wants to lead the green transition, it will need to take bold action now, not just for the sake of the EV industry, but for the millions of jobs and the future of its economy. So what sort of things do you think should now be happening in the European Union, in Europe, in the EV battery space to secure independence? Let me know what you think in the comments. You can also write your comments as long as you like. We all like to read very long comments, but not many people do that. So if you're going to write a comment, feel free to just make a very long comment. That's all right. If any of you are interested, I do have Patreon. I also do have YouTube members, so you can click on my channel and click the word join, and then there are 2 tariffs, and you can be a part of live streams every week, and also there are some other perks. So feel free to check them out. I genuinely appreciate your time. Thank you very much for that, and hopefully see you in tomorrow's video.